Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming in. This is my first conference talk, so bear with me, please. I will try my best. Since we are a small team here, let's make it interactive and challenge me so that we both learn something from it, maybe. So, who am I, essentially? I'm Mert. I am an engineering graduate. And after I graduated from engineering, I did trading for 6 years for multiple investment companies in Turkey, which we managed market making in options trading and some other futures trading as well. And basically after that, I decided to pursue a master's degree in cybersecurity, and I was intrigued by the offensive side of security more. And I dived deep into it, basically, and I pursued a master's degree at Royal Holloway University of London. After that, I started working as a senior security engineer at Kozoi Technologies for around 4 to 5 years. I worked there, and I founded SecPortal with a couple of my co-founders, and here I am. I am also maintaining an OWASP agentic security regression harness project. If you're interested in agent security or agent security harness, feel free to check it out as well. Yeah, let's begin. So, yes, I would like to begin the talk with an interesting story of how I actually was intrigued by security side of things whilst I was trading. When I was trading, we were managing billions in the fund, but there was an incident that we had to deal with day to day, which was precisely a timing-based attack on the market making pricing algorithm that we had, which was stealing around $1 million per day from the desk. So I said, then trading is not about making money. It is actually about saving what we made during trading instead of just making more money, because losses can be huge at scale as well compared to our profits. So I decided to pursue the security side more and dive deeper into the time-based attack surfaces. And yes, I tried to research about it and tried to find solutions which we could not back in time. The attack was basically a quite complex attack, which was an FPGA embedded into the collocation place in Turkey, which was basically within the same boundaries of our physical ecosystem, but it was a lot faster than us. So it was actually buying cheaper than what we were putting in the market, and it was actually selling it to a lot more expensive price to us. So it was, in that sense, it was stealing millions of dollars per month from us. So I had to look into it and try to solve it. And we all had, back in the days, we didn't have any FPGA developers. Back in the days, I remember trying to research all those VHL languages and all those languages to try to come up with a solution faster than them. But we even knew the team who was stealing the money, but it was completely legitimate because what can we do? It's a fair game, and they're just faster than us. So we couldn't stop it because it was a legitimate market game that they were playing. And yeah, we had to learn everything from scratch. And I'm pretty sure we lost millions in 2 years, and then we settled down and find a solution. But it took a lot of time and fun, I would say. So that side put me into a security engineering intrigue position more, basically. So I will talk about the timing-based attacks, and one should not be overseen is like there can be race conditions and other attacks which the system might seem to be correct, but if there will be two requests to the same system, that might end up with a problematic result that was not expected if it is not within the boundaries of the system in itself. This slide basically explains that. There can be two valid checks. Let's say you have $100 in the bank. It's a generic example, but like let's say you have $100 in the bank, but you make two quite parallel checks to that bank account and try to withdraw £95 from it. If it is quite close, the requests are quite close, and if bank does not have, obviously they have the checks, but if the bank does not have the checks in the back end, you might be able to withdraw £95 from the bank account. In theory, obviously it's not practical anymore, but you might be able to withdraw £95 of funds from a bank account that you only have £100. So that's what this slide is basically explaining in here. Two valid checks, two valid updates, but one broken rule. If that rule is broken, then you can abuse everything basically. So the bug might not exist in the function in itself, or the code in itself, or even the application in itself, but the bug might be within the interoperating system that you have within your distributed system basically. This will not be a finance talk, although the story I just mentioned was a finance story. It stemmed from a lack of security perspective that we didn't have back in the days. We should have had. This will be about hostile time, hostile state, hostile evidence, and hostile input. Hostile time, as I just mentioned, races, like race conditions, retries, sometimes retries. If like in some vulnerable applications, if you force retries in the application, meanwhile send a legitimate request to that application, retry and the legitimate application request might interfere with each other and might result in an unexpected behavior. That's what race condition and the retries is in here. Deadlines, queuing, and resource contention. Sometimes we also had situations that in our backlog, one of the least priority operations was clogging a higher priority operation within our system. So this is what it's meant by resource contention in here. If you have a limited capacity, or you're forcing your capacity within limits, and if your least priority operation is clogging that limit, it is a problem for everyone basically. Before even allowing you to operate your most utmost priority operation basically. Hostile input. This can be anything, right? Like malformed, ambiguous, and almost valid protocol messages. I am talking about protocol messages in here because I have been developing algorithms within PIX and OUCH protocols mainly. I think those are the global protocols within finance that are used for order management and basically market making, embedded market making algorithms. And the third one is hostile state. By the way, I'm saying hostile in here, but it doesn't have to come from a malicious actor. And an uneducated employee or anyone that is not aware of what's going on within your system or a distributed system can easily cause these issues within your system as well. Hostile state transitions transitions that are legal alone and catastrophic together. I believe I have an example of this in the upcoming slides. Basically, within an authentication system, in some of the authentication systems, it is possible to force a refresh token and log out at the exact same time, which you can keep the session alive, meanwhile log it out at the same time, which is not intended, obviously, within the system. So I will be talking about that hostile state in more detail later on. Hostile evidence: logs that disappear, diverge, or cannot prove causality. Logging evidence for the SOC side of things and the event management is always great, but if you can't replay those incidents, or if you can't replay those logs, it is really hard to estimate what's happening and how to come up with a futuristic solution to that exact problem that you had. So evidence we have to be able to replay our evidence, and at the same time, we should not give, obviously we do, but we should not give administrative rights to the certain employees that can alter the logs in any way, so that at least we know the integrity of the logs are there for us. Why my model looks like this? Basically, as I just mentioned about my background, I started as a low latency it says C++, but like low latency C++ Scala algorithm developer, and then transitioned into basically market making engines that we were doing there, and then transitioned into security engineering and OWASP project maintenance, and eventually ending up with a cybersecurity company myself. I just have that potency. I treat every parser as hostile. I will talk about these in more detail in the upcoming slides anyways, the bias part. Production is a distributed state machine under adversarial load. It doesn't have to be specifically under adversarial load, but distributed systems are complex systems which have probably multiple clients, multiple gateways, proxies, services, data, identity, and queues. So security failures often live in the gaps between these boxes, because I've been in teams where this distributed system was dedicated to separate teams, and they were so disconnected from each other. The security failures happened due to the disconnection between those teams, instead of because every one of these pieces can be quite intact and solid, but if they're not connected in the right way, I think that's where the majority of the security failures stems from. 4 lenses I stole from trading systems. As I just mentioned, time was the most important factor within our algorithms and our engineering approaches, basically, because 1 millisecond mattered a lot back in the days. I'm not sure how it is right now. I'm pretty sure it's even more competitive with the upcoming LLMs and all the complexity of the attacks lately, because I stopped trading in 2019, so LLMs were not that profound back in the days. So parsing, attack the interpretation. There could be multiple parsers in the way in distributed systems, basically, which can happen in your WAF, or before that or after that in your reverse proxy, or within your system. You might have another proxy that you might have another gateway that you're parsing the outbound from those systems as well, and that should be rock solid so that it can't be misinterpreted, or it can't be led to be misinterpreted by the attackers in that sense. State attack the transition, as I just mentioned in the previous slide. I think these parts can be quite solid individually, but attacking the transition might leave a gap within this distributed system that we just spoke about. Attack the record. This is a different one. Basically, if an attacker has the access to the identity that has the access to that log, or that has the access to write to that log, then this becomes a real problem for everyone, because not only the attack in itself is the problem, you can't prove how the attack happened, and you can't replay the attack, and that results in a catastrophe which you cannot even prove to yourself or to your customers or to the relevant regulatory terms. Time is an attack surface. Correctness changes when the scheduler. Yes, I didn't mention the scheduler, but obviously there are schedulers within operating systems which might give you a result that you are not expecting within your boundary of time. You might expect the scheduler to schedule a specific task within 5 seconds, but it might just be outbound, and it might just schedule it in 7-8 seconds, and it might lead to millions of dollars for a trading firm, depending on how crucial is that operation is. Network and attacker, choose the order, yeah. Latency bugs hide between correct components. I think I mentioned this before. There is a post request in here, and there is a retry as well. Sometimes even though you send a post request, let's say to a redeem, first it timed out, but it went into a retry loop, and it tries a redeem for the second time. In the meantime, the first post request also gets into the queue, and it results with a commit. But however, if this issue is solved in the backend, it results with a second commit as well. 2 successes, 1 intent, and it might lead to results that you wouldn't probably expect. Yes. When I was a senior security engineer, we had that vulnerability management program where we had the SCA, SAS, DAS infrastructure scanning in place, and then we pulled those scanner results, we pushed those scanner results to Jira and assigned ownership to everyone, right? That in itself is a huge problem if you're dealing with thousands of vulnerabilities a day. It is really hard to assign ownership to those vulnerabilities and find true owners to those remediation cycles. However, there is another point that has to be made. There is another world beyond scanners output, which attackers can and do abuse in the wild, which is retry timing, connection lifetime, lock and queue, pressure, request order, and these mainly stem from the timing attack surface. The missing test dimension is timing here, as I just mentioned. Timing attack surface, the practical inventory. There are different perspectives into this timing attack surface. Basically, race conditions, 2 valid operations collide. they sometimes end up with double spend, like the withdrawal from the same bank account I just mentioned, or MFA bypass sometimes as well. I don't know if you experienced that before, but I myself found some of the reCAPTCHAs in the wild before MFA being quite invalid. That can be easily overstepped, I guess. That's the term. We can just skip that reCAPTCHA process. So I myself found a bug in a quite relevant cryptocurrency, that they were completely relying on a reCAPTCHA in between to protect their resources from the attackers. They were relying on reCAPTCHA a lot, and like some companies and some enterprises, even holding a lot of funds behind, do rely on reCAPTCHAs, MFAs. But what if those front end figures are bypassed in any way? There should be a mitigation in between as well, and there should be constant checks in between. We can't just rely on MFAs and reCAPTCHAs. I would argue. Retry, I mentioned that. I mentioned the retries. Deadline. Sometimes there are partial commits to certain requests, which end up with leaks within the system, and then you don't even see it in the runtime, but you see it after when things starts breaking, and you try to dive deep into it and find the bug within partial commits instead. Q. Priority inversion is the inversion that I recently mentioned. If a least priority operation is clogging your utmost priority operation, which can happen and which happens quite a lot, that is called priority inversion, and that has to be properly aligned. Starvation is a resource starvation. Sometimes attacks stem from starving the resource capacity within the systems, ending up with a DDoS or like not working systems for its clients, basically. Clock. That is interesting because that can mean a lot of things. That can basically mean your operating system clock or anything within your operations clock, basically. But operating system clock, what I mean by is like when your client has a different, even if they're in a different time zone, and you are trying to manage your distributed system from client's perspective and your perspective from separate time zones, that can result in ambiguous results as well. That's for ordering and like order management and all sorts of stuff. Lock. This lock can mean multiple things. It can mean atomic operation lock on the databases, or it can also mean mutex locks within your memory management, basically. Defend the invariant, not the happy path. Yeah. We tended to defend the happy path, and we were happy with the result of our system, but we should be defending the invariant path instead of the happy path. Invariant is what's solid within the system. Intent is unique, and the order is explicit. Retries are boring, but they can be replayable. Timeouts are honest. There are no unexpected timeouts. Scheduling testable. Delay the order, duplicate, cancel, and saturate in tests, basically, in here as well. a timing test that actually earns its name. First, this is one of the high-level overview of what we've been testing within our infrastructure whilst we were trading. Model, we created an invariant model, and one intent. Although this is not practically true, it like one intent produces at most one side effect, it says, but it usually produced a lot more than just one side effect. But as long as they are known, and with 95% confidence interval, you could say these are our side effects and this is our intent. At least that's somewhere nice to be in, rather than not knowing the state and not having that knowledge in the first place. And try to disturb that model, test it, inject delay, cancellation, packet loss, retries, and contention on that model that you're 95% sure repetitively, and observe the correlation IDs, versions, queue positions, and commits, and just rerun it over and over again, because things might change within your system. And obviously your model has to keep up with the changes within your system. Schedule testing measures correctness. Load testing measures capacity. The dangerous messages are usually not invalid. They are valid enough to be interpreted twice. That's the issue, I guess. When we think that everything is going right, we don't see a problem within our system. They might not be invalid, but they might just be valid enough to break your system day by day, and you would never know until something catastrophic happens. So these parsers within your system has to have boundaries within your system, so that you know exactly what's happening, and even the invalid tries or retries within that parser, you have to be able to interpret that instead of just not knowing what just happened for the last 6-7 months. Protocol parsers teach suspicion. Basically, within trading, we had multiple protocols. Fix, ouch, as I mentioned before. These were some of the tags that we were using whilst we were receiving orders and sending orders to the market. Although they look simple, it in itself causes a lot of problems if it's not managed properly, because there has to be a sequence that you have to send the orders with. If you mess up one sequence and if something gets in the way, there can be wrong orders in the market that you could pay potentially millions of dollars of fees to the market order itself. Stock exchanges in themselves. So readable and simple are not the same things in here. There's a lot more things to consider, like encoding, framing, length, even endingness of how you're sending those specific requests to those parsers, and how they're parsed on their side and on your side, basically. This is a repetition of one of the previous slides. Almost valid is where the bugs live. When we are dealing with binary protocols, or when we are dealing with certain protocols that involves that requires certain sequences to be parsed, then the length, duplicates, and non-canonicalization, partial beats, integer bounds, version drifts become real problems, and these should not be within the ambiguous boundaries of any business logic, because like let's say if a parser is expecting 90 bytes from you, and if you're sending 88 bytes to that, it might misinterpret the bytes that you're sending to that parser specifically for the upcoming requests, and it might just break all the things depending on the agreement in between, or it might just partial read it and not read the rest of it. And length, count, or timestamps might be important sometimes as well. Yeah. This is one of the simplest examples of a bug. Basically, it is like if it's one message but two parsers, one interprets the last value first, and the other one interprets the first value first. This symbol might simply be evil and bypass. However, the real request that you're sending to the gateway is actual happiness symbol or whatever corporation that you belong to. And yeah, this is a simple example, but two parsers might prioritize the last value you sent first, and the other one might prioritize the first value you sent first. This is partial differential and not bad validation in itself. Yeah, I mentioned this before. Binary protocols are honest teachers because there's a lot of things that can go wrong within binary protocols in here, framing, endianness, versioning, bounds within these binary protocols, basically. So what's the suggestion? We try to keep it as simple as possible, although it is not practically possible. It always, like, complexity always pulls your algorithms to another side. But I would try to parse it once, canonicalize it once, reject once, I would say. So I know what I'm dealing with, what I'm parsing, what I'm canonicalizing and rejecting specifically in that order. Yes, and then no duplicatability. This is explaining the canonical model, canonical form before policy, property-based, and differential fuzzing. Do not let a VAF, gateway, and backend independently invent meaning. There can be parsers in any one of those, but you should have strict rules in between, and you should know how they're parsing your input and outputting your input, or vice versa. So there shouldn't be any interpretation in the way. Everything should be quite atomic and quite monotonic, I would say. Third, state machines break before code does. This is what I mentioned earlier on as well. Scanners do not pick these kind of problems within live systems. They might pick vulnerabilities. They might pick certain gaps within your system, but they do not show whether your bugs within your state machines or the state of your system whilst they're working or whilst they're dynamically producing results. Design never named. Yeah, there might be security bugs when the implementation reaches a state the design never named or never intended. Authentication is an order life cycle, basically. Comparing it with trading system, I would say. There is an anonymous request to authenticate, and credentials accepted, MFA pending, authenticated, logout requested, and then session expiry, revocation of the session. It's just it's quite similar to the order life cycle within the markets as well. There's an order new, pending, partially accepted, live, cancel, pending, and done, basically. The names differ, but the systems are quite parallel to each other. The impossible state is where the vulnerability lives. This is a quite simple authentication diagram that we have in here. Auth pending, MFA pending, and then when an anonymous request, whilst auth pending and an MFA pending, tries to reset pending, if there are no clauses in between, this is a huge identity management issue. Because session goes live due to an unnamed transition from auth pending without MFA pending, so it skips this MFA pending completely. That's why I would double check, triple check maybe our reCAPTCHAs and MFAs before relying on MFAs and reCAPTCHAs completely. Yes, if your architecture or your diagram cannot express it, the code will just improvise on what's working and what's not, and output the results accordingly. This is the refresh and logout race condition that I mentioned early on. In some systems, refresh tokens and access tokens, in most systems, I guess, refresh tokens and access tokens are separate. Refresh tokens are a lot longer lived than access tokens, and refresh tokens, I assume, they send requests to the backend to keep the access token alive and keep refreshing the access token. But if they happen in parallel with logout and refresh request eventually, you might revoke the previous token, refresh the new token, and log out, but keep your session alive still as authenticated with the newer access token that you have from the refresh you sent early on with logout. Basically, this is quite simplistic. This can be argued a lot. Yes, but I try to keep it as simple as possible. We can argue around this and then the previous slides that I had, and would love to learn from you as well. Make invalid states unrepresentable. This is basically writing boundaries and having explicit states within your system, such that like you name pending, revoked, expired, and recovery states, so there cannot be anything ambiguous within your system, even if it is causing bugs, or even if it's causing errors within your system. It has to be within your explicit states. Transitions should be guarded, because that's where we have seen most of the security failures stemmed from when we were trading. And version credentials, tokens, carry generation or family version, that can be a solution to that refresh race condition I just mentioned. Terminal means terminal. When a token expires, it should expire. It should not be called 36 hours from then, just because a client wanted to keep their session alive for 36 hours straight. Terminal means terminal, and it should end that way. You should be able to refresh the tokens in a way that does not keep a token for 36 hours, 48 hours, just for the convenience of it, or the usability of it, basically. Atomic invariance, I mentioned that in a couple of slides before as well. Test transitions, not pages. This is an authentication from to event to an invariant diagram, basically. MFA pending to logout, or like reset pending to old password login. Authenticated, there are like tons. We can probably come up with many permutations of these from to variants, and test all these within our authentication. And we should, basically, because we should have the explicit states of what's happening from to each state, and that might differ from time to time as well, depending on when the request is made and how the request is made, because it is quite hard to make definitive and deterministic requests to that specific event handler. So it has to be tested consistently. This is about logs now. Logs should preserve causality and integrity, not just produce searchable text. Funny enough, that within the companies that I work in, like even having searchable text for the incidents that we had was something great for the company in itself. But funny enough, that this is not even the bare minimum, I would say. Logs should preserve causality and integrity. Some of the companies do not even know where they're holding their SIM logs, or like how to parse through those logs and find the relevant results upon the incidents that they're receiving from their incident managers. And every incident should be replayable, and those logs we should not let anyone rewrite the logs in any way, such that we trust to the integrity of the logs. And I will talk about more in detail in the upcoming slides. We should have those logs in a completely independent place where we cannot interfere with it, and we should trust to the structure and the sequence of the logs in itself. Most logs tell stories, few preserve evidence. Yes, as I just mentioned before, if an administrator can rewrite the history, logs do not mean anything, does it? Because if an administrator or a security operator can rewrite the logs, then would you be able to rely on that log specifically? If, let's say, like when we were trading, if we were losing a lot of money for the company, our jobs were at stake, right? So if I were to compare that to a security operator or security analyst, and then you give that security operator and security analyst rights to write to that specific log, would you be able to trust that? And which records are missing? Do you know which records are missing there? Or can you replay the decision? So the logs should be completely independent and outside, although it might end a little bit overhead to your logging operations. That's where we benefited from lately within our company as well. Event sourcing is not magic. What it does not give you. Event sourcing is basically, you know which events happened in which time stamps, and that is useful. You know what happened. But if you gave over privileges to certain identities within that logging system, again, can you rely on that completely, or like how? Or sometimes I saw companies that they stopped logging from some point due to the fact that they were paying a lot to just hold those logs within a specific place. Can you rely on that? So it is. Event sourcing is definitely something to begin with, but it is it is definitely not magic that we should rely on, I would say. What's suggested in here is if you have event sourcing within your system, within your incidents and everything, what's suggested is turn those event loggings into a stream that is tamper evident, which could be made in multiple ways, but the simplest solution that I could come up with, just create a canonical event structure and then hash it, and then link that hash to the previous event, and at the end just sign it with a private key, so that you know where it comes from, and the integrity is intact within this evidence or the event stream. And that's one of the simplest solutions to this issue of event tampering or anyone interfering with the logs that you have in between. Just basically hash the events and link them to each other and sign it in the end, so that you know where it's coming from. Replay is a security superpower. When we had the incidents, we usually interpreted the incidents quite manually and decided on whether to action on them or not, basically, whether they're false positives or true positives. But actually there should be a way we should replay every single incident and see actual results and actual outcomes from those incidents and prove it deterministically, instead of relying on manual checks and manual interpretations. So, what to change on Monday? Well, I talked about time, parsing, state, and evidence. This was a quite biased talk because I'm coming from a trading background, and like these were the main pillars that we were dealing with in day-to-day activities. I'm pretty sure this might not be the case for you, but it might help. Time, definitely choose one critical operation, add idempotency, and test timeout plus retry. Idempotency, you expect the result to be the same when you do the same thing over and over again. That's what should be tested within your time-bounded operations. Parsing, this should be canonical, and it should be explicit in every state, that you know what is parsed and how is parsed before everything is too late. State, draw one auth or record name every pending and terminal state. I mean, I believe this should be tested in every permutation. We can't just say, oh, I just wrote my password and I just logged in, it works. It might not work that way. Someone else might just write something else and it might work that way as well. And that's quite unexpected for I'm pretty sure we all are using third-party authentication life cycles that we rely on and that we trust on, but still there can be some companies still trying to form their own authentication or identity management system that has to be investigated diligently. And the evidence is basically, replay is the king of evidence, I would say. If it can be replayed and no one else can tamper the evidence, then it's good. Otherwise, to me, it can't be relied upon, I would say. One system for exercise, no new system for that before. So, bearing in mind that we only have 10 minutes, do you guys have any questions, or I'm open for discussions of any kind? If you want to teach anything to me, I'm more than happy as well. This is my first conference speech, so thank you for being in here. If you have any questions, just let me know, please.
How did you first detect that there was a malicious system there taking money away from you?
It is quite easy to be honest. You see the order that is being faster than you. you actually
How
see...
do you know it's malicious rather than just any other market actor? What made that special?
Because you see it before you put the specific price to the market, it calculates the price before you and puts it before you in that millisecond.
So you had an expected outcome that didn't materialize.
Yeah, no, you see it in the order table. You see their order for like let's say 5 stocks of like something. You see their order first, and then it sells you for an expensive price, and then in a millisecond it buys from you in a cheaper price. You see it you see it in the order, but it is really hard to beat it because there is a lot of things in between. And like options pricing model, we were using Black & Scholes options pricing model. It is quite it's mostly the same for everyone, and they are using Black & Scholes as well. It's just the fact that they put an FPGA that is doing that exact same routine over and over, and that's not doing anything else but just that specific thing. They were making millions of us, and we couldn't stop that basically for 2 years. And yeah, and we actually knew the guys as well because they were calling us as well. We knew them, but we couldn't do anything.
How much did you buy in FPGA stock?
I didn't buy in FPGA stock, but yeah. But I mean, FPGAs are quite like right now. I would say GPUs are more hype than FPGAs because FPGAs might not process the requirements of LLMs as efficient as GPUs probably. So I wouldn't bet on FPGAs as much. But yet again, I'm not a hardware expert. FPGAs are good for doing one specific thing, one repetitive thing over and over again. And if you can actually design that specific thing, you can actually market in specific ways. Still, there is an option for that. You can do that. But yeah, GPUs can't do that. GPUs are good with parallel processing, but they might be slow for specific processing. Yeah.
Thank you, Mert. So when you're securing super low latency systems, how do you know when to prioritize availability over like runtime security controls?
Availability over runtime security control.
So like logging and like extra challenges. And obviously, like at the moment, you're prioritizing like that's what's like more costly money. So like how do you what makes you decide like when to prioritize? Like
I think in there losses are the real decision making thing, right? Like it might not only be financial losses as well. It's like reputation loss is another thing for investment companies. If you're losing customers worth of millions or billions, even if you're not losing money for that specific time, you're losing money in the long term. So there is a risk-based decision which has to deal with either financial side of things or reputation side of things. You have to either pick the reputation side or the financial side depending on So you make it either available or you pick the other side and make it secure.
There's no like compromise.
Yeah. It has to be a balance.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
You probably can use like out of band logging to do that as well. So you can do like passive monitoring on stuff. So you can keep the low latency systems working properly.
Thank you.
Or you're logging the kind of overhead of that, computing, analysing it, logging on, storing it. The kind of hashing you suggested, that can all be done out of band.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
It makes
typically what
sense.
people
Like
do.
it's really not as good as like active super load of controls. Like it's still like a bit of a compressor, right?
Yeah. I think by the time stuff hits the system, it's generally human errors part of the concern of it. It's like if they made a wrong trade, they made a wrong trade.
Yeah.
You're not going to catch that on a system.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Yes.